Welcome to this week's Ozark Writers Workshop, Plotting a Romance Novel in 2 weeks. I am your instructor, Landra Graf. I'd like to take a moment to thank the Ozark Book Authority for allowing me to present this condensed version of my workshop virtually. I'll have more information about how you can sign up for the full workshop later on in the presentation. Today, in this workshop, we are going to cover how to confirm and identify your heroine, hero, and antagonist GMC, negative traits, positive traits, wounds, and false beliefs. Being able to channel creative crack and all the fantastic stuff that comes with it. Having plotted a 4-act romance with 5 turning points. And how to be confident in rocking out a fantastic story with an outline that still provides creative freedom. What should you have before we get started? A vague idea of the story you want to write, including romance genre, book length, concept and idea, and loosely based characters. Some additional optional resources include some books, GMC by Debora Dixon, Romancing the Beats by Gwen, The Emotional Wound, Negative Trait, and Positive Trait Thesauruses, or having access to the website onestopforwriters.com. If you do not have access to any of these texts or the information, no worries, you can move forward without it. First up, let's talk characters. Characters are what make the story turn. Their goals, motivation, and conflict are essential, and there's 4 parts to character development. The first is basic details. What do they look like? Their career, unique characteristics, thinking tattoos, piercings, scars. You can use the Myers-Briggs personality spectrums, or astrological signs can be great for helping identify traits and how characters handle conflict. And also quirks and mannerisms. These are things that they may do, tapping their feet, always keeping their own drink with them, or collecting stuffed animals. Have at least 1 quirk or mannerism for each character. Then we get into the super important stuff, like GMC, goal, motivation, and conflict. You have external and internal. I'll tell you a little bit about each of them, because without the GMC, this is how your story gets the saggy middle or starts falling apart. Your external goal is the future state. This is what the character wants in life, and it cannot be stagnant or be about maintaining the status quo, though a character's goal can change midway through a story. The external motivation. This is formed in the past. It's what's pushing them towards their goal. It's good to solidify this in 2 places, once in their recent past and once in the distant past, like their childhood. The most important thing to note about motivation is that motivation never changes throughout the course of the story. Finally, conflict for external. This needs to be whatever is putting them in direct opposition of their antagonist, the what and the who that's stopping them from reaching their goal. Internally, their goal should be what they want out of life and what would satisfy them emotionally to put them at peace. That motivation internally is again formed in the past. You'll want to look at the wounds and possible behaviors to show why they want this. And the conflict is what is stopping them from reaching it. Then we get into wounds, fatal flaws, their fears, negatives, and positive traits. Wounds can help fuel that motivation that you're looking for internally and externally, and give them behavior traits. It also helps you determine things that they fear the most and can be influenced by the wound. The fatal flaw or false belief is why they can't have love or why they aren't worthy of it. This is important because it's going to help stop them from taking the full plunge into the romance. And finally, negative and positive traits. These help round out the character's actions, ways they react, and are great for building conflict. The last part about developing the character is the backstory. This is all the details. Personally, I have started doing a double backstory when plotting. This includes a present and a past backstory. The past is all about their childhood and who they used to be, and then the present is who they are and who they've grown up to be now. It can include big things, little things, you can play around with it, but it's all those details that you have in your head that kind of make the character who they are. Now that you've got your characters plotted out, we get into the plotting of the story. This is the meat. This outline is going to contain 4 acts. Act 1, the setup. Act 2, falling in love. Act 3, retreating from love. Act 4, fighting for love. Each act contains multiple parts that will make up the chapters of the story. Note that this workshop relies heavily on the Romancing the Beat structure by Gwen Hayes. If there is one book I really urge you to purchase, it would be this one. So let's kick it off. Act 1. This is your first 25% of the book. Hayes calls this the setup, and there are 5 beats and parts. When I talk about beats and parts, you can use each beat or part to serve as its own chapter. The first one is the intro H/H. This is hero/heroine. I usually combine 2 beats into one chapter and introduce them both. And you're going to introduce them by showing their normal everyday lives, but with a twist. Make it interesting. Hint at their needs, their wounds and flaws, and show us that goal and what's stopping them from getting it. Next is the meet cute. This is where hero and heroine meet. Sparks are going to fly, and it's a physical yay, emotional nay. Conflict is going to be present here in a big way. Next up, we have the no way number 1. This is the hero or heroine's reason for why they can't do love and stuff. Now you can pick and choose to do one or both of them. Adhesion. This is the final beat in the first act. This is all about why these characters can't get away from each other. The possibilities are endless, but this beat forces them to be together. This is where a romance trope can come into play, like the fake fiancé, the marriage of convenience, the stranded, the protector, job competitions. There's so many to choose from. The bottom line is this act is going to lay the foundation for conflict, character arcs, and goals over the course of the book. Now you're ready to get into Act 2, the second 25%. Hayes calls this falling in love. Again, there's 5 beats or parts. The no way number 2, where you reiterate the reasons love can't be a thing and why the characters are broken. Dip a nice foot into that backstory, but remember you don't want to give the whole thing. No info dumping. Second, if in the first no way you chose to only discuss one of the main character's reasons for why they can't do love, then this is where the other character gets their reason expressed. Next is the inkling. Put a hold on the fatal flaw. Give the hero and or heroine a reason why their thoughts about relationships might be wrong and have something happen that brings them together. Then it's deepening desire. You're going to build the conflict externally and have the characters still falling for each other. Emotionally, hero and heroine are reaching a point to act on their desire. Followed by maybe this time. This is all about the intimacy and the sex. But for closed-door writers, intimacy is the big part. This is where you ramp things up. They're going to act on their desire versus their better judgment. And note, even if you are writing an erotic romance, this particular scene needs to mean more than any sexual presence in the story. Finally, you reach the last beat of the act, midpoint of love. This is the peak of the mountain. Anything seems possible, and maybe this whole getting involved emotionally thing isn't so horrible. They've fallen for each other even though they're not going to admit it out loud, and things at this moment are never better. Where do we go from here? Act 3. You're now going to write the third quarter of the story. The first is the inkling of doubt, and this is all about retreating from love. Inkling of doubt is time for that sucker punch. You're going to look at the no ways from earlier in the story, the flaws, their wounds, and start planting a seed of doubt within each of the characters of why this whole thing is a bad idea. This can be happening externally and internally. Followed by deepening doubt. Their attachment still continues. They're still adhesed together, but the seeds of doubt are growing. Sexy times can still be present, but afterwards, internally, they need to be concerned. Next up, retreat. This is where they voice that concern and trouble, internally or externally, or even both. What is driving their fears and worries? How do they protect themselves? And they can talk to secondary characters or keep things quiet. But regardless, they're about to start running from love. And that's when it shields up. Whatever happened in the no way beats earlier in the story, the reasons they can't get into a love thing, it comes to fruition. And their worst fears are realized. It's all over here. Followed by the breakup. This is actually where they react to the breakup. They're choosing to run from love and forgiveness instead of towards it. This combined with the shields up beat is what romance authors often refer to as the black moment. Both romance black moments and the external black moment can happen at the same time, but everything must come crashing down around these characters. So now that you've disassembled it all and made it a wreck, how do you put it back together? That's Act 4, the last quarter of your book. Hayes calls this fighting for love. And again, there's 5 beats or parts. Your first is your dark night of the soul. And this is where the hero and heroine start to realize that they've screwed up. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel. They may still be resistant to opening up to love. And they think that they've lost it all. But then it's time to wake up and smell that coffee. This is where they start to fight for love over the fear of losing it. It's time to bust up those things holding them back and toss their shield to the ground. It could be too late, but they're willing to try. In either of these beats, mentors, close friends, they can all be a sounding board for our main characters or tell them that they screwed up royally. Next is the grand gesture. This is go big or go home time. It's where the hero or heroine sacrifice what they think they want or think they need for what they truly do, and that's the person that they love. Growth must accompany this. Now, typically, the question is who gets the grand gesture? It will be whichever character has the worst flaw or needs to have the most growth, typically is the one that requires the grand gesture. Now, for inspiration for grand gestures, or if you're thinking, I don't know what a grand gesture is, if you've ever seen the movie Jerry Maguire, the final scene, the one where Renee Zellweger says her famous line, "You had me at hello." That whole scene is the grand gesture. Feel free to watch it again. It's a great one. Next up, you have Wholehearted. Now, this is your final shot. It's the finale of the story and a great place to set up the next book if you have a series. You can always do a quick rewind. Bring the characters back to somewhere they shared earlier in the book, like a meet-cute spot. Again, options are endless. And lastly, the epilogue. It's not always a requirement, but sometimes it's good to have an extra scene that shows the reader the distant future where the happily ever after is still a reality. Now, a couple of things. The plotting I have shown you is based on dual point of view, meaning you get both hero and heroine's point of view throughout the story, but you can alter this to just reflect a single point of view. Second, even if it's not mentioned, you should be including the antagonist throughout the story. And here's a list of some of the beats or parts where that works best. The intro to hero and heroine, adhesion, either of the no way beats, inkling of desire, inkling of doubt, retreat, shields up, or even the breakup beat. Third, this structure can be condensed for shorter books, novellas and such. You just combine the beats where necessary. And then some final tips. Remember, nothing is set in stone, nor does it have to be. In some cases, you may have one idea, start digging in, and another emerges. That's okay. It's also okay to change your mind 20 times. Think of this plotting as a roadmap. It doesn't need to impede the discovery writing, but it allows you to get back to the main road if you wander off of it. Play around with ideas and possibilities. Always trust your gut. And of course, find inspiration in other places as you brainstorm. Chat with friends, listen to music, watch movies, go for a walk in nature, play some video games. It's everywhere. Now that you're done, congratulations. You just plotted a romance novel. Now it's time to write. I want to thank again the Ozark Book Authority for allowing me to present this condensed version of my Plotting a Romance Novel in 2 Weeks workshop. A full-length class is offered by me, and you can learn more about how to access that class via my website at landragraf.com. Thank you so much for taking this time, and again, I hope you enjoyed it.